The Lives of the Saints by Father Albin Butler, September 25th, St. Albert of Jerusalem. In the year 1099, when the Crusaders under Godfrey of Bouillon established the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem, the Greek hierarchs were dismissed from their principal sees and churches and replaced by bishops from the West, whose only faithful were to be found in the ranks of the Crusaders themselves. Thus there was a Latin Patriarch in Jerusalem, and it is regrettable to have to say of most of the prelates who held that office that their behavior was as equivocal as their position. Consequently, upon the death of Patriarch Michael of sad memory, the canons regular of the Holy Sepulchre, supported by King Amaury II of Lusignan, asked Pope Innocent III to send as his successor a prelate whose virtues, skill, and energy were widely recognized. Accordingly, 2 years after the death of Patriarch Michael, Albert, Bishop of Vercelli, arrived in Palestine to fill the difficult position. The prelate belonged to a distinguished family of Parma. After a brilliant career in theology and law, he entered the Abbey of the Holy Cross in the Lombard city of Montara as a regular canon. When he was about 35 years old, that is, in 1186, he was consecrated Bishop of Bobbio and, almost immediately, was transferred to the see of Vercelli. Because of his skill in diplomacy and his unquestionable honesty, he was chosen to act as mediator between Pope Clement III and Frederick Barbarossa. Shortly thereafter, Innocent III sent him as legate to northern Italy, where, thanks to his good offices, peace was restored between Parma and Piacenza in 1199. The Pope did not wish to get rid of such a valuable element to send him to Jerusalem and dragged his feet, but in the end he approved the election of the canons, invested Albert with the pallium, and gave him the additional appointment of papal legate in Palestine. St. Albert left Italy in the year 1205. Already 18 years earlier, the Saracens had reconquered Jerusalem from the Crusaders, and the see of the Latin Patriarch had moved to Acre, Ptolemais, where the Frankish king established his court. Consequently, St. Albert went to reside in Acre and, from the first moment, worked to gain the respect and trust not only of the Christians, but also of the Mohammedans, which his predecessors had not succeeded in doing. As patriarch and delegate, he played a very prominent role in the ecclesiastical and civil politics of the Levant. In a period of 9 years, he had to deal with a myriad of issues that tested his patience and prudence. In the first place, he was continually confronted with the difficult problem of maintaining peace between the Franks and the natives of the country. But it was not for the accomplishment of this difficult task that the illustrious prelate distinguished himself greatly. Between 1205 and 1210, St. Ricardo, prior of the Hermits of Mount Carmel, asked the Patriarch to order the monastic life of the hermits under a rule that he and his subjects would abide by. St. Albert responded to the request with a brief but absolutely clear and concise document of 16 chapters. It called for complete obedience to the chosen superior, a separate cell for each hermit with a common oratory, manual labor for all, prolonged fasts and perpetual abstinence from meat, and observing daily a period of silence from vespers until after terce. Each hermit must remain in his cell or near it, devoted day and night to the meditation of the laws of the Lord and dedicated to prayer, unless he is engaged in some legitimate occupation, the Holy Patriarch warns in his document. That rule was confirmed by Pope Honorius II in 1226 and modified by Innocent IV 20 years later. Whoever the founder of the Carmelite Order may have been, there is no doubt that St. Albert, Patriarch of Jerusalem, an Augustinian canon, was its first legislator. Innocent III called St. Albert from the East to attend the Lateran Council, but he did not have enough time in his life to take part in the great assembly that opened in November 1215. For 12 months he worked busily and faithfully to support the Pope's vain efforts to recover Jerusalem, and then his death came unexpectedly and violently. Shortly before, the Patriarch had been forced to dismiss the director of the Hospital of the Holy Spirit in Acre, and since then the man nourished in his inner self a bitter resentment against St. Albert. On the feast day of the Exaltation of the Cross in 1214, the Patriarch was leading a procession in the Church of the Holy Cross in Acre when the expelled director of the hospital came upon him and stabbed him to death at the site of the attack. The feast of St. Albert was celebrated by the Carmelites since 1411. The Bollandists noted the anomaly that the Augustinian order, to which Albert belonged, did not celebrate the saint in their liturgy, but that is no longer the case since the Lateran Canons Regular now commemorate St. Albert on April 8th.